Hello and welcome to APH Access Academy Slate and Stylus 101. I have a quote that says, "All praise to the humble slate and stylus." This I think I found in the Monitor by Rebecca Blavet. I thank you. I agree. All praise to the slate and stylus. This is APH's Access Academy. We are so glad to have you with us today. Joining us, grab that slate and stylus, grab some paper. We're going to get ready to go. I'll start with who am I? I'm Leanne Grillot. I am the National Director of Outreach Services for the American Printing House for the Blind. I'm a teacher of students with visual impairments, an orientation and mobility instructor. I'm a PhD candidate at Florida State University, as well as an adjunct professor at Florida State University. I love this field, and yes, I do have to say, I love some of these older tools because of their versatility. I also have someone joining us. Leslie?
Hi, I'm Leslie Weilbacher. I am the outreach specialist for the Northwest region with APH. I'm also a TVI O&M. And though I started learning Braille in first and second grade, I then took a break until high school and then really decided when I got to grad school that I needed to brush up on my Braille, and I started using Braille more. And that is actually when I was introduced to a slate and stylus. And I have several examples throughout this of how much I actually use it. Let's look at our learning objectives. So, number one, we will orally name the cells necessary to create randomly selected Braille letters using the first side, second side, top, middle, bottom format. 2, independently and correctly load paper, write words and numbers with correct spacing. 3, identify specific activities for teaching the slate and stylus to students. 4, identify practical suggestions and exercises to assist a student to become an efficient slate user. Okay, I think that's back to you, Leanne.
It is. We have to get a little bit going in understanding why the slate and stylus has importance. Prior to Braille's breakthrough, there were many attempts to create a tactile alphabet, and many of these were based on print. They were some variation of the Roman letters we use today. There were few people being educated who were blind in that first half of the 19th century, and those that were reading all sorts of raised shapes and raised letters. But if you think about it, those raised shapes and raised letters are only a reading system. Creating a raised shape or raised letter was cumbersome and difficult, and often used machines to be able to do so. And these weren't something readily available to the individuals that were reading those systems. So that attempt to create a system was really an unsuccessful system for writing as an individual. Well, enter Louis Braille. His alphabet had many advantages over these other tactile reading systems, and that 6-dot configuration was really flexible and it could be easily recognized by touch. But true literacy is not just reading, but also writing, and Braille's system could be quickly and easily written by hand. And so with the invention of the slate and stylus, people who are blind were becoming truly literate for the first time. So there's the importance of how did this come to be? Why do we use or have a slate and stylus? So let's think for a minute. I have a feeling a majority of you out there actually use your vision, that Braille is probably not your primary reading medium because percentage-wise, that's the way it goes. So for a moment, I want you to look around you in your environment, and I want you to see how many within reach of you right this moment have a pen or a pencil. Put a Y in the chat. If you have a pen or a pencil with you, I want a Y or a chat. These things we have never given up. The chat is just blowing up with Ys. This is because this is our normal thing. That doesn't tell me you don't have a computer in front of you. A majority of you probably do right now, or your phone or a tablet, which has a writing system, but pens and pencils have not gone away. They're inexpensive. We usually have a favorite. And that's a way that we put a visible mark on a piece of paper and write something down. Well, the Slate and Stylus does the exact same thing, just creating these tactile punches into a piece of paper. It's inexpensive. It's portable, can stick it in a pocket, in a bag, ready to go. You could take notes really easily. And there's a variety of styles and shapes when it comes to the pen or pencil, just as the slate and stylus. There's a variety of sizes and shapes. So everyone looked around and they found pens or pencils around you. Usually you have some type of writing material. How many of you are still addicted to those little things called sticky notes? Those little sticky pieces of paper where you can write a note. Well, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of Y's in the chats. See, you didn't give that up either. That was a quick way to jot down something simple. Well, we want to give our students and adults this opportunity as well. Don't give up on the slate and stylus. Great. Okay. So why should it? Well, of course, all those same reasons that we give the slate and stylus to students who are blind. That's why we give pencils, papers, crayons, markers to children who can see. So sighted children have access to the computer for years, yet we didn't replace it with the pens and pencils. We are still exposing them to all of these things for a handwriting instruction, to take a quick note. Well, also it's cheap. It's the inexpensive thing. You break a pencil, I can easily get you another pencil. So the slate doesn't need batteries. You don't need to charge it. It's portable and it's easy. So this is something to really think, what do you have available to you? Most children really begin writing with a braille writing machine in the area we live, but that is not necessarily true across the world. Many places start with a slate and stylus because that braille writing machine is just too expensive. We have the luxury here in America of having that handy and readily available. But how heavy is that thing? It's heavy. And yes, it's excellent for writing and editing reports and doing class assignments, but it is bulky and heavy. And if a student is moving around to just a small group, they don't need to lug that around. They can actually just use a slate and stylus for something quick and for themselves. It's a great note-taking device. I'm not saying that we don't need our whole array of electronic braille note-taking devices. We do. They all have their place. They pick and choose what they need, just like people with sight pick and choose if they're going to use their computer to take notes or a pen or pencil to take notes. Give the choice. So when do we begin? Well, I am telling you, introduce it as a toddler. Let them open and close it, make marks on papers. Attach meaning to whatever they make. It's okay if they have scribbled just a bunch of dots. Attach meaning. What did you write? Most young students make up what they wrote on the fly of the moment, just what they decide they wanted to say. Usually after they've written it, they weren't writing it with a thought in mind in the beginning. Give one to parents to model use at home. At a toddler age, even the parent themselves doesn't even need to model perfect braille or even real good actual letters. It's just the idea that writing has meaning. Make sure that young children have a slate and stylus available for pretend play, to make their own grocery shopping list, or to write a letter to a friend. This beautiful picture is actually from NFB. They have a free Slate and Stylus program, and that link is going to be put in the chat, but we'll also send it in the follow-up email. This is a great place to be able to write and get your own Slate and Stylus if you do not have one. Okay, we're going to get into the pieces and parts. While doing this, Leslie is going to be our wonderful Vanna Leslie, and we are going to make sure that you are able to see her hands as she describes some of these. You should have the ability to toggle between the pictures if you need to. Okay, we're going to talk about the parts of a traditional slate. A traditional slate could be made of plastic or metal. It has two sections held together by a hinge. That hinge only works in one direction. So if you're trying to shut it the other way and it's not going, don't force it. That means you're going to break your hinge. And on the plastic ones, they can break pretty quickly. So make sure you realize it only goes in one direction. The bottom of the hinge has 4 rows of pitted cells. It's a solid piece of either metal or plastic with 28 in each row. Find the bottom of the slate you have and rest it flat on the table. The top section has 4 rows of openings or windows over those pitted cells where the slate, if it was closed, it would be located over. So how many windows do you think are in each row? I'll look in the chat, see if anybody can guess. How many windows are in each row? Ah, each row, Margarita said 28. You are right, there are 28. It equals the number of pitted cells that you have. There are 28. So each window is available for those cells. If you want to place it in the right way, your hinge should be placed on the left-hand side with the windows section on the top when it's closed in the writing position. So now you've placed it in the right position. Now, I want to talk about that slate for a moment because there's some special items on it. Those windows that are there are not straight edges. They are kind of rounded or notched. If you take your stylus and you run the stylus around the perimeter of the window, you're going to feel it bumpy. Okay. I will put one caveat depending on the slate you have. If you found an opening that's smooth, not bumpy, it means you have found a slot for labeling tape. Some slates have it, some slates don't. If that opening is smooth, it means you have found the one where the labeling tape will run through. Some have it on the top part of their stylus, some have it near the bottom. It just depends on the stylus. So if you've come into that smooth part, that's what it is. So just be aware of that. Okay, now, if you have a slate that opens, I want you to feel that bottom part of your slate where the pits are. You should feel some bumps sticking up. Those are the holding pins. They should be in each corner of the slate, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. And this is where the paper goes. And when you close a piece of paper in it, you would hear a popping sound because it's going to pop holes into those 4 pieces. That's holding it. Now, with the slate closed, feel the top piece where all those windows are located. Between the second and third row, you should feel a raised line, long all the way across. This is a dividing line, and it helps you keep your place. Also on that front, you should feel raised bumps or raised dots. These dividing dots are located between the first and second row and third and fourth rows, and they're used to keep your place. Start on the right side of your slate and count how many cells over until you come to a dividing dot. If you come to a dividing dot, what do you come up to? We'll see in the chat what people come up with. The standard is 5. If you have something different, you either A, counted off, which can happen, or you have a slightly different slate, possibly from a different country, and I won't know. So just know that the standard is 5. This helps you find your place, though. It's your slate. You should know what your slate is. Okay, we've got to get paper in this slate. We can't work with just a slate. We've got to do something. So let's figure out how to put paper into our slate. I'm going to tell you, shorter paper is faster for new users. So trying to use a long 8x11 piece of paper is really big, and I would start with something smaller. The first method you can do is you can stand the slate on its edge. Okay, keep that hinge on that left-hand side. Don't change that. You're going to place the paper into the slate between those two pieces and push it over to the left to touch that hinge. You're making sure the edge of the paper is on that tabletop or counter that you're using, and hold it in place and shut the slate. You should hear pops.
Leanne, could we stop sharing for a moment? I have a spotlight on Leslie's hands, and I would just love to see that demo one more time, full screen.
Okay, she is going to stand the slate on its edge. She's going to put the piece of paper between the two pieces against the edge of the table and push the left-hand side over to that hinge. She's going to hold it in place and close the slate and pop those pins. And there you go. Okay, that's one method. There is another method you can use. Okay, this time we're going to put the slate flat with the back side down onto the table and open it up. The hinge is still to the left. We're going to take our paper and we're going to push it gently up to the edge of the hinge on the left and then slide it forward until you feel that the paper is just below the two top pins. That means the two top pins will not punch into the paper. This makes sure your paper is straight. You're going to close the slate, which punches the bottom two pins into the paper. This is a second way you can load your slate. Neither is right or wrong. There are two methods. Both work. Both are sufficient. Pick the one that works best for you. Try them both so that you know how to do this. Okay. How are we doing? I'm going to share my screen again. Let's move on. I do want to talk about one other slate. I'm going to talk about the Janus slate. The Janus slate is a slate that doesn't open. It has windows on both sides of the slate. So for orientation, to help us understand it, if you happen to have something like this, the part that doesn't have an opening, that hinge, if you will, is on the left-hand side. It doesn't open. There's usually a little notch on the right-hand side for slipping the paper in. When placed this way, the first side of the paper or note card will have 6 lines of braille. And when you flip it over, your second side will have 5 lines of braille. Each line has 19 cells. This is a way that you can braille on 2 sides of one piece of paper, often called interpoint. This slate also has dividing lines, and because it holds 6 lines, on the first side there are 2 dividing lines between the second and third row and the fourth and fifth row. And on the back, it has 2 dividing lines between the second and third row and fourth and fifth row to help you know where you are. And there are also big raised dividing dots located between the first and second row, third and fourth row, and fifth and sixth row on the first side. And of course, the back row doesn't have it, sixth row, but there is still dots there to help you orient. Place every 5 cells if you start counting from the right toward your left. Okay. We have to talk about how you're going to put holes into that piece of paper. Let's talk about holding that stylus. There are a variety of different styluses, but you're going to hold a stylus with that pin end down and the knob or saddle end up. There are different opinions on what hand to use. So some say this is a job, the stylus should always go in the right hand and the left hand is always a placeholder. And if some of you are piano players and I tell you that your right hand does one thing and your left hand does another thing, you would agree with me. But there are other opinions that say it's your dominant hand that should do the stylus and the other hand is a placeholder. I don't care which way you do it. I am not going to judge you. But whatever hand is not holding the stylus is the guide and the one that gives you better control of your stylus. So keep that in mind. I'm going to say right hand, but if your brain is doing it the opposite, you guys get to flip it around. So your right hand is going to hold it. The forefinger of your right hand curves over the top of the handle, and your fingertip is reaching down toward the pin. Your thumb kind of fits on the side of the handle, meeting the side of that forefinger. And it might actually go down a little ways toward the pin, depending on the size of your thumb. Your middle finger may move down the side to kind of grip the pin, kind of joining your thumb, helps you have better control. The movement of your stylus goes straight up and down on the paper like a needle in a sewing machine. We're popping holes. Okay, keep that in mind. We're not writing with a pencil, which has an angle. We are popping holes into that piece of paper. You can sharpen a stylus if your stylus needle becomes done, if that pin becomes dull. But do be careful to not make it too sharp. If it's too sharp, your dots may be too small and actually easily flattened. You can also end up getting unwanted dots if it's too sharp. If you are, though, having a problem with your stylus, you will know because it's starting to stick in the paper during writing. That's when it's becoming very dull. Okay, we're going to move on. If you were holding your stylus and kind of moving it up and down, and this is not a normal movement for you, your wrist and your fingers might be getting tired. Your wrist and your fingers need quite a bit of strength. So this is taken from Toby Burton and OTR/L. Work marbles in clay, pushing them in and out, finding the marble in clay, hiding in the marble and clay, lacing cards, hook and loop material, pulling it apart, the hook part from a tennis ball, using tongs to pick up objects, manipulating coins in your hand, pushing golf tees into clay or into styrofoam, or actually playing the piano. All of these things are strengthening those fingers. So think about these activities for your students if they just don't have the finger strength to do very much. And last but not least, paper. So 8.5 by 11-inch paper, I am highly suggesting cutting in half or even cutting in thirds, especially for someone who's beginning using the slate. You can use braille paper, perma braille, regular print paper, construction paper, cardstock. You could use 3x5 index cards. You can use photo paper. You can use labeling stickers. And for our younger students, you can play with any type of paper. The thicker the paper, the more durable the braille, lasts a little bit longer. But if you are just writing a grocery list, there is no reason it has to last forever. I buy different groceries every time. Let's get to writing. And Leslie's going to demonstrate. Hopefully you've got a piece of paper in your slate. You're ready to go. Now, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about First, how we read and then how we write. When we read English and Braille, we read from left to right. When we write in Braille with a slate and stylus, we write from right to left. Think about how those words help us. We write from the right. After we write with the slate, we turn it over like a page in a book. That movement allows us to read the letters that we were writing in the correct position from left to right. Try that for a moment. Just try flipping your slate over and then back again. Okay. If you happen to have a swing cell or a peg slate, I'm sorry, peg slates are discontinued, but they're still out there. This is a pop cell. This is a way you can kind of demonstrate making it and then flipping it over. We want you to start to write on the right side of your slate. And you're going to start to write on the right side of your slate in the very first cell on the right. I'm purposely saying these things over and over again. We're talking about that first column on the right of the first cell. The first column, that first row on the right, from the top to the bottom, are dots 1, 2, and 3. And the second column is 4, 5, and 6. Wherever we start, whether we're reading or writing, we're always starting with dots 1, 2, and 3. These are ways to help sink it in your mind. We're going to make some marks. Find the first cell on the right on the top line. Use your left forefinger so that it's placed next to you so you know where you are. Remember, you can use your thumb and your finger to help you with the stylus. I want you to find that one in the upper right corner of that cell. Push down on the stylus with your right hand. Remember, straight down. If it was hard, that means you were probably at an angle. Straight down goes right into that pit below. Move your left forefinger to the second cell. Follow it with the stylus in your right hand and make another dot 1. What you want to do now is continue all the way across whatever your first line is, making dot 1 over and over again, that upper right corner. Try to have a steady rhythm as you're going across the page, even pressure pushing down on your dot. Because when you're done, what you want to do is turn it over, remove the paper, and actually read what you've written. Why? Because writing is not enough. You need to check your work. Did you do the correct dots? You're human, you're learning, you might not have. How about the dot height? How does it feel? Did you miss any cells? Did you skip one? Were you able to keep a steady pace? There you go. Okay, put your paper back in. This is good practice. Find the holes you made in your paper from the paper holding pins and replace it in the slate in the same spot. So it takes a little time. Find those holes. The bottom ones are often the easiest to find if you've used either method. And find the hole in the slate and line them back up and push it in. This is something that you need practice with. Again, shorter pieces of paper for beginners makes it easier. Okay, return to that right-hand side and find the first cell in the second line. I just want you to find it. Okay, found it. Now, what I want you to make is I want you to make dot 3. That is the bottom right-hand side. You're going all the way down that cell to the bottom and make a dot 3. Bottom right. Move your finger to the left. Move your stylus to the left and make another dot 3. Go all the way across this line, making a dot 3. Try again, steady pace, keeping that sewing machine movement going and pushing your cell down. This beginning practice is just allowing you to get comfortable with your stylus in those little divots, punching those holes. Say to yourself as you're brailing, I'm brailing dot 3, so that it's in your head. Those of you that don't have a Slate and Stylus and have that opportunity to write in the chat, does anyone know what a dot 3 is all by itself in Braille? Well, if you're not quite sure, I've got a couple thinking. A dot 3 all by itself is an apostrophe. Those that said apostrophe are the winners. It is an apostrophe. Okay, now, done with that, what I want you to do is I want you to find row 3. Find row 3. You should be feeling that there is a raised line between row 2 and row 3. This helps you find row 3. Row 3, you are going to skip. I want you to skip a row and see what it feels like to have a skipped row of Braille. Move to your 4th line. In your 4th line, make dots 1 and 3. So punch the upper right-hand corner, move your stylus down to the bottom, and make the bottom right-hand dot. Dot 1 and dot 3. Those of you that, I have someone fast on the ball who doesn't have a Slate and Stylus. Margarita, you're right. It is a K. You've made a K. That line of Ks that you're doing, think about doing them dot 1 and dot 3, not dot 3 and dot 1. Getting that rhythm of doing the first dot as dot 1 and then dot 3, not the other way around. There is technically no right or wrong way to make your dots, but as a beginning Slate and Stylus user, I would suggest doing the dots in numerical order. An expert user of the Slate and Stylus will often begin in a place that makes the most sense from the letter they left, whatever their last letter was and where their stylus is. But I would not start doing that until you are a more proficient Slate and Stylus user. Now, if your hand is tired, I'm not surprised. For some of you, this might be very new writing. And if you are a beginner student, I probably would have stopped here. But you're adults, I'm going to push you a little further. Because some of you might not have strong knowledge in Braille, and that is okay, I am going to have in the chat dropped the Braille character dot equivalents. This is from the website Iowa. Iowa has a great accessible place where you can see written that A is dot 1, B is dot 1, 2, whatever the dot patterns are for what you're trying to write. So just keep it in mind that if you're a little shaky on your Braille, I've got a place to help you out. Now, Leslie has done great work showing all of the Braille that she's been working on. She's checked her work, but now she has used all 4 lines. Well, actually, we skipped 3. This is the time that we're going to talk about second slate positions. You're going to open your Braille or your slate. You're going to find those bottom holes. Put your finger on either side of those bottom holes and move it up to find the top holes. Those holes are already made, so the pins are going to go right over it. So you find that bottom pin, move it up to the top pin, slip it over the edge, and then close the slate. You are going to again hear that popping sound because 2 new holes are made in the bottom of your slate. And you are now in second slate position. This is something you should practice a few times. This is something that you need to get really smooth with. So take some time to actually practice doing that over and over again. Pick up the paper, find the dot, slide it up, lock it in. Do it over and over again. Get comfortable. And again, a small sheet of paper is, you could do it 1 or 2 times, and then you're done with that piece of paper and you can have somebody feel successful. Okay, that was just the beginning. We need space. Most of our words have spaces between them. So after reviewing just those few dots that you've learned, let's talk about those spaces and create those dots with spaces in between. Let's see if you can keep up with me. Put your paper in, get your hands to the right side. Here we go. I'm going to pause for a minute. Leslie, would you be willing to open your slate and find second slate position if I stop sharing?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so
Do
Leslie
that again.
Yep, she is going to move it back to first position. Sorry. Yeah, it's going to take you a second.
Okay. So
Okay.
here it was first, basically.
So she has taken her fingers and she's found that bottom pins where it's already poked through. So her hands are on either side. She's going to find the hole, hold it with her fingers, and slide the paper up the slate to find the top 2 holes. It should already kind of push into it. You don't have to make the hole, it'll fit into it. And once both of them are over those pins, you shut the slate and it will pop the bottom 2. Okay, so we're going to get back to creating spaces. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually call out, and Leslie, if you mess up, do not worry. You're busy on camera anyway. We're all human.
I'm performing under pressure.
Performing under pressure. Do not always just call dot names. Start alternating what you say. So say things like, do a dot 1, do a space, make a K, do a space, make an apostrophe. That's that dot 3 if you don't remember. Put a space. Give me a dot 1, space. Give me dots 1 and 3, space. Give me a 3, space. You see how I'm alternating what I'm saying? What we want to do is to be able to move the language so we are able to talk about these different things. If your hands are tired, stop. Okay, you want me to pause. Leslie, they really, really want to see you do that. I guess to make some dots. So we're
I've
going to
been
have
doing
you.
it.
I know, but I made the camera big again. So they want to see it big. Okay, let's make a dot A, a space, make dots 1 and 3, a space, make an apostrophe, a space, make a K, and a space. So you get the idea. Now, if your hands are tired, you can always kind of open the slate slightly without making a dot, put the point of your stylus into the cell where you are and kind of rest it at an angle. You're not really making a mark, you're just kind of holding your spot. Challenging to do on camera. It just gives you an idea of what you can do. Okay. Back to share for a little bit. Hold on, click. Okay, so we've done our spaces. We're going to move on. The next thing we're going to move on to is dots 1 and 4. So those are the ones to, let's see, the next line, dot 1 and then dot 4. So now you're using dot 1 as your anchor. You know where dot 1 is. And then we're going to work on dot 4. Dot 4 is the upper second column. So you are going to do dot 1 and then slide your stylus over to do dot 4. Practice this with spaces in between, dot 1 and dot 4, dot 1 and dot 4 and a space, dot 1 and dot 4 and then a space. When you're done with that, you locate the next line and try doing a row of dot 6 separated by a space. Dot 6 is the bottom left-hand side, so the bottom second column. So you're now adding those extra dots. In your third line, try a row of letter U. Does anyone know what dots are a letter U? One, three, six. So 1, 3, 6, letter U. After you've done your third line, do your fourth line as 1, 3, 4, 6. Does anyone know what 1, 3, 4, 6 might be? The letter X. So if you notice, we are practicing those upper and lower corners of your cell. These are some of the easiest dots to create on the Slate and Stylus. So you want to focus your energy on those cornered dots, 1, 3, 4, and 6. So you want to talk about what letters can be made now. You could make an M, you could make an N. So you've got extra letters that you've now added in to your work. Don't forget, open up your stylus or open up your slate and check your dots, know what those are. Okay, Leslie, I'm going to pause you and let you put it into another sheet of paper. I'm going to pause for a moment. You remember those dividing dots that were in there? I want you to see how helpful they can be. So open up your slate, move your paper to what would be third position if you have a long enough piece of paper or a new piece of paper, and that's okay. We are using a slate with enough cells that we can make 3 columns, one starting in cell 1, one starting in cell 11, and one starting in cell 21. So cell 1 is easy. So in cell 1, in line 1, we're going to write the word mama. Don't forget that capital. You now know it. Mama, M-A-M-A. Now that was cell 1 in line 1. In line 1, I want you to find cell 11. You can use your dividing dot since it's broken up by 5s. Your first dividing dot was 5, your second is 10. So right after that dividing dot is cell 11. And write the word Mac. Mac is a name again. Don't forget your capital. After you've done that one, I want you to find cell 21. So you were in 11. You should feel your next dividing dot is 15. The next one is 20. So right after 20 is 21. And write the word max. Don't forget that capital. The rest of this slide is actually talking about doing the same thing in line 2 and the same thing in line 3. Actually creating columns of answers or words, numbers. This is a way that you can actually move. Practicing having lined and items using your dividing dots is a way to line things up for yourself as well. So if you're in line 2, your first cell, we're just going to move the names around. Now I want you to write the word Mac. And Leslie, you don't have to keep up with me. And then cell 11 would be Max. And cell 21 would be Mama. Line 3, do not keep up with me, Leslie.
Yeah, now I'm behind.
That's okay. Max is in cell 1. Mama is in cell 11 and Mac is in cell 21. This is a way to actually practice and feel what those dividing dots do for you. So while Leslie is working on keeping up, haha, we're going to launch a poll. I'm curious about how you're doing. Do you get it? Do you kind of sort of get it? Do you get it and can explain it? Do you get it and you can teach it? And it's okay if I have a lot of get it's and can teach it. And it's also okay if I've got a lot of I don't get it. It's okay. While we're letting people rest their fingers for a minute, there was a question about the difficulty of a child to convert the positions of dots when they need to write with a slate and stylus. I am hopeful that as a teacher of any person learning Braille, that we are explaining the dots by number. If you're explaining the dots by number, then your student should not have a problem. One of the greatest joys of a slate and stylus is seeing that you can instantaneously make something on your own independently. Even if a paper goes in crooked in a slate, it still writes. And there is a joy in scribble. So students of any age, if they know their dots, again, we start writing on the right, we read on the left. So it should work. Okay. We got a lot of people that have figured it out. We're going to move on. I'm going to end the poll. Okay, 4 dots down, 2 to go. Ready? Okay, dot 2 is next. It's in the fourth line or whatever line you're in, depending on what your slate, where you are in your slate and stylus. In the first cell, locate dot 2. The middle top of the right cell. Some people find this by locating dot 1 and then moving down along that side to dot 2. 2 can be tricky. And I saw Margarita remembered, yes, 2 is the comma. 2 is the comma. So what I want you to do to learn to is first make dots 1, 2, 3, 5 times in 5 cells. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now see if you can make dot 2 by itself all the way across the rest of the line. 2 is hard to find. Use dot 1 to assist you in finding dot 2. Use those edges. As you get better, your fingers will find 2 quite quickly, but you've got to practice to find dot 2 quickly. When you know dot 2, add some letters in. Does anyone know what letter we just made? In the beginning
It's
of
one
this
of my
line?
favorite letters, and it's one of Leanne's favorite letters.
Yeah, it's the letter L. Ooh, we love dots 1, 2, 3. If you are an L, have an L in your name. This is make a B next, make an F. Use your single letter words. Make a but, make from, make like. Use this as we're talking to our students. These are things that they will remember. Practice making a comma and a space before completing each one. So make an L, a comma, a space, a B, a comma, a space, an F, a comma, a space. Get practice with that dot 2. Dot 2 takes practice. And by this point in time, as you've practiced those, I'm going through Slate and Stylus fast. Add a few words in. Start by dictating words. Move to short phrases such as a calm clam or black buck mall. Don't forget to remind students to do spaces, use commas, and use capitals if it's a name. Keep those in mind. Now it's time to start doing some of those words in. I had a quick question. If you are, and I can answer it verbally, if you are loading the paper by placing the slate on the side with the hinge to the left and place the paper in the top, do you need to rotate it so that the hinge is at the top right? No, the hinge stays in the left.
It does, but you know what I noticed, Leanne, is
What did you
when
notice?
I demonstrated it,
It ended up backwards. Yes.
It did, because the hinge should stay on the left, but the windows should be at the back.
With
Yeah.
where you're going. There you go. Okay.
I'm sorry, the windows should be what?
I'm sorry. So the windows should be facing away from you and the pitted cells closer to you, but the hinge should still stay on the left.
Thank you. Thank you.
I believe. Yes.
Yes. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
That makes
There you
sense.
go. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Okay. You've got more dots with dot, or more letters with dot 2. You can now make an I, you can make an S and a P and a V. And these are ones that you would then want to practice with your student. Now, I do want to pause for a moment and talk about correcting errors by adding braille dots. Now, we have to admit we all do this. First and foremost, do we like when our students do it? No, but people in print do this all the time. So we need to realize, especially with the Slate and Stylus, which is a majority in America used for personal note-taking, correcting errors by adding dots is just fine. Ways to assist your student is actually asking them to braille 10 A's with spaces separating them. Proofread, make sure your A's are all correct. Then teach them to put the paper back in and actually add dots to each A to make new letters, changing the A to a C, a K, an M, a U, an X, V, P, B, F, and L. Of course, always rewriting is preferable to correcting errors in Braille, but really, truly, this is something that is often for personal use. So teaching a student to be able to do it for themselves, it's quick and easy. There's really nothing wrong with doing that. So make sure that you're talking about how to find these and then make the correction. A student should be able to feel with the pin of their stylus that a hole is already made. There's an actual different feeling to the stylus when you put it into a hole that's already made. And making a new hole, there's definitely movement to push it. So this practice is really good practice for your student to do. Dot 5 is your last addition. Dot 5. Take some time and find your first cell and use your left finger and stylus together and locate dot 5. For orientation, it's sometimes easiest to find your upper dot 4, that corner, and slide slightly down using that little ridge to come to dot 5. Make a dot 5. For help in learning orientation, similar to how we did with dot 2, to orient in 5.5 better, practice miking dot 456. 456, 456, and do that at least 5 times, and then try to make dot 5 across the paper. Dot 5 is the last one you're adding. Again, dot 5 can be tricky, but we actually use dot 5 an awful lot. And we've added really the rest of our alphabet here. So D's, J's, E's, O's, R's, H's, and your period. Look at all the different things your student can now make. And you. These take practice. You're not going to be able to do it quickly and efficiently just from this webinar. Now, that last thing, correcting errors. Remember how I said fixing errors with a dot works really fast? And we do have to remember that extra dots on accident can be easily erased. Remember, personal use. Erase with your finger or with a braille eraser. If you're using a wooden eraser, remember it's that narrower end that you're kind of pushing down that unwanted dot, and you're kind of pushing and turning your eraser to do so. That pencil style eraser is also an eraser that you could use. Some of the things that you might want to practice with your student is actually making 6 L's. Erase dot 1 in the first 2, dot 2 in the middle 2, and dot 3 in the last 2. Making letters and changing them. Again, this is for personal use. If the student can't feel it, and they know what they're reading, they're good to go. It's theirs. These are their personal notes. And that, of course, adds our last letters. And I put those dot combinations on here for those people who might not go find their online sheet for them. Okay, I've got another question. How you doing? I went through the rest of the alphabet fast. Okay, good. Glad to see. Most people are feeling pretty comfortable, and that's good. Those of you that aren't, definitely go through the recording. Okay, this is the time to practice some of these. Awesome. Okay, we've talked all about the alphabet, and spending time on the alphabet is really, really important. But we also have more than just the alphabet, don't we? Okay. The number sign. Making the number sign dots 3, 4, 5, and 6 is something that definitely should be practiced. So take the time to think about, okay, we want to do dot 3, 4, 5, 6. These are not used until you've learned all the dots because it has dot 5 in there. So you shouldn't be expecting your student to number anything on their Slate and Stylus until you have completed learning all the dots. After that, practice making the number sign and then practice writing the numbers 0 through 10 with spaces. Don't forget that. To make this fun, you could actually ask questions like, how many people are in a quartet? How many sides are in a triangle? How many numbers are in a week? You could have your student practice using those dividing dots to actually make columns of answers. A simple numbered answer will work just fine in that space of 5 cells. Number sign, practice with something fun. More number practice? How many letters are in your name? How many letters in the alphabet? How many cents in a dollar, or inches in a foot, or hours in a day? Again, some of these simple things to get that number practice going. Okay, Leslie, I'm going to give you a pause for right now. Okay, here we go. For some of you who haven't practiced your Slate and Stylus in forever, and even for some of you new people, give it a shot. Write your name. Do it in grade 1. No contractions. Think about each letter as their number combinations and do it in numbered order. If you've already started and you've forgotten your capital, move down a line, put that capital in there. You are an important person. You deserve your capital letter. You want to take some time, and names are so important. It's one of the best things for our students to learn with their Slate and Stylus. Making your own name. I highly suggest using even paper stickers and putting those into your slate or your student slate and having your student make their own name for any of the artwork that they do. Have them put their own mark on their artwork, their own name. And the sticker sheets make that quick and easy. Yes, as a teacher of students with visual impairments, you might often make these for them. Once you teach that Slate and Stylus, this is theirs. Let them do it. Okay, let's go beyond the basics now. Okay. Grade 2. As you've noticed, we've done no contractions. That's after you've learned the alphabet and the numbers. Grade 2. And I'm going to answer a quick question. Yes, in the chat it asked, after a space after a number sign cancels the number sign. And yes, it does. Make sure you're doing your number sign before each number. You remember, we want our students to practice writing the number sign on their Slate and Stylus. So that's a great way to keep practicing it. For our next steps, it's grade 2. For our next steps, it's paragraph indentation, actually moving in before they start writing. Adding a page number to the piece of paper they're working with. We've done none of these things. Good readable braille, something they can exchange with someone else. And columned writing, often using numbers. Those are next steps. Don't worry if you're not there yet. You want to think about increasing your speed and increasing your students' speed. So some of the basic challenges that I suggest are, how many times can you write the alphabet in 5 minutes on your slate? Time it, put the timer on, or ask Google to do it, or Alexa to time you. How many alphabets can you fit in 5 minutes? Then how accurate was your alphabet? If the letter's wrong, it doesn't count. Or let's repeat the same character all across a line. You were doing some of that in the very beginning. It's a great way if you have certain letters of the alphabet that you struggle with. So saying the letter in your mind or saying the single word contraction in your mind over and over again, repeating that character that you're struggling with. I have a handout that there's a link to, which gives you some of these quick tips in there. One of the things that I've given you is these sentences that practice all the letters of the alphabet. How many of you know the one about the lazy dog? Put a yeah, why in the chat. Do you know that sentence with the lazy dog in it? Okay, I got really bored with the lazy dog. So I went out on the internet and I found different sentences because I got bored with the lazy dog, who's not very lazily, as Leslie pointed out to me, because he jumps over a lot. There is the 5 boxing wizards jumped quickly, or the family barracks with the xylophone is in a friendly, over-objectifying Mozambique. Or freight to me 6 dozen quart jars and 12 black pans. Maybe your student's name is Alex. This one works. Big Alex quickly drank 5 whole cups of zesty plum juice. Or Jacob. Jacob quickly drove a few extra miles on the glazed pavement. Again,
That's dangerous.
these are, yeah, it's very dangerous. These are just ways to practice your speed in maybe a more fun way. Another way to increase a student's speed, or even your speed, if this is you, keep a journal. It's yours. It's personal. You can make errors. It's okay. It's a way to practice, and then use your downtime. Again, the Slate and Stylus is quite portable. Sticking it in a backpack for your bus ride to school or your bus ride to work, maybe waiting in a doctor's room. You could be writing almost nothing if you're just practicing your speed. So again, practicing the alphabet or certain characters you struggle with, or actually taking notes for something. This is what you can do to practice your speed. Now, I'm going to let Leslie take over for practice exercises for your Slate and Stylus with you or with your student. You ready to go, Leslie?
Okay. So if we're talking about naming some dots, you want to spend some time reinforcing the dots that create the braille letters when even using your braille writer. And we already do this a lot of the time, and it's a very good practice to keep up. Alternate between asking for specific letters, punctuation, combination letters, and then asking for dot combinations. And we've practiced that with Leanne. And this is an image here of a Papa-Dot, and I'm actually using the pencil style eraser to practice the motion of pressing down straight, and then I can flip it over and feel what I did. So I'm starting from the right, going to the left. And then practicing words. So spell dictated words, that's always a good exercise. Except grade 1 Braille. If the goal of the lesson is to practice the Slate and Stylus, let the goal be to practice the Slate and Stylus. If the goal of the lesson is to practice contractions, then practice contractions. But layering those on top of each other can sometimes get very frustrating. And accept creative spelling. So this is an image of some Braille with some very interesting spell. So boat. How many little kids have you known who have spelled boat B-O-T-E instead of B-O-A-T? Practicing numbers. I think this is a really fun idea to practice numbers. If you have some tactile dice, you can roll the dice and write on the slate what you rolled. But you can do it in a couple of ways. If you roll a 5 and a 2, it will be both 52 and 25. You can draw from a deck of cards. That's always a fun one. And you can make all of these a game. I mean, you can play Yahtzee. You can play who draws the higher card number. And you can increase, instead of just practicing numbers, you can also work on some letters by writing out the suit names, but instead of using the abbreviations, write out the suit names. And don't forget to use the number with the number sign. And you can also pull dominoes from a bag, another really fun game. And this is a picture of dice showing 5 and 2 while a person writes it with the Slate and Stylus. Practice sentences. Lots of fun ideas for practicing sentences. You can use an index card on it and address a file. Valentine's Day cards. That's a nice, easy, quick one that is also a social activity. You can Braille a deck of cards. I've definitely done this. My niece really, really wanted to play a game called Exploding Kittens. It has a lot of very tiny print on the cards, so I made her read me the cards, and then I had to come up with a way to Braille them that made sense that I could still play the game. So I started abbreviating a lot of things, like, I don't know if anyone knows this game, Taco Cat became TC, matching up the taco cats. And this is a picture of a letter I wrote Leanne in Braille saying, I'm very excited to do this webinar with you. It literally was 2 sentences, but it took up 7 lines of Braille. So I had to change the slate.
Tricky. And
Okay.
last but not least is grade 3 Braille. So Leslie just demonstrated how she used grade 3 Braille on her Exploding Kittens game by abbreviating Taco Cat. Is that what you said?
Taco Cat.
Okay, Taco Cat. Okay, so
it's a palindrome.
grade 3. While there were people that tried to build a grade 3 system, for the most part, grade 3 Braille is this invented Braille. It's a personal system. So the personal system, we need to make sure we're giving our students the allowance to create their own Braille when it's a personal system, using EX for examples, or dropping the number sign or punctuations or capitals, or actually using text abbreviations that they might use. For a personal system, this is fine. For their notes, this is fine. So giving students time to build their own personal system is important. Oftentimes the braille that they're doing is not for personal use and it's being turned in, and we're asking them to meet the standard. We need to give them downtime in which we can actually expose them to ways to build a personal system. Most print users see personal systems being used by parents, friends, older siblings, etc. And our students don't get those examples. So giving your student the opportunity to learn these personal systems for themselves is the Slate and Stylus is a great place to do this. I am going to bring up one other way. If you want to look into briefhand, which is a type of shorthand in print, it actually can be easily adapted for Slate and Stylus or the Braille writer. The rules usually call for dropping most vowels, some words, using semi-phonetic spelling. And I put some examples on here. And for example, don't write silent vowels, just write T-A-K for take and drop that E. Always write vowels that begin in words. So the A in approve would always be written. Write long vowels, but not short vowels. So for the word rope, you would write R-O, it's a long vowel P, but not the E. You wouldn't write the O in hot. You just write HT. You would omit silent and repeated consonants, like remove the K in knee or the second P in apple. And they remind people not to shorten proper nouns unless you already have established how what that proper noun is. So if you've always abbreviated it in a certain way, then you can keep using it. But if you're not quite sure, that's one that you should take the time to actually write. So it's just another way to utilize your Slate and Stylus. And of course, you could do these things with a Braille writer as well. Okay, Leslie, getting the most out of your Slate and Stylus.
Okay, so some use in the home. There's braille tags for pantry and freezer items. This is actually a picture of my baking cart. I like to bake. I have 5 different types of flour. All the bags felt the same. I started putting them in different canisters that I couldn't remember which canister was what. So I ended up brailing tags. This glass jar has a perma braille tag, which is this thick plastic paper. And the metal canister has Dymo tape sticker label on it. And it's also, for the freezer, I put those perma braille tags on a rubber band or a piece of string, and I put it around the various types of frozen fruit, because going through the freezer, your hands get very cold, and then it's hard to figure out what you're doing. Let's see. Stickers to label canned goods. I also put the stickers on magnet strips so I can reuse the magnet on you have a can of tomatoes, you take it off, you stick it on the refrigerator, and then you have a shopping list. I am now out of tomatoes. I already talked about adapting a pack of playing cards, but we like to play games and that comes up a lot. And labeling CDs or books or DVDs, all of those sorts of things. Some uses in school. You can add a note to a print document that you're sending home. So then when the parent says, so tell me about what you did at school today, the student can pull the paper out of their backpack and say, oh, that's right, this is something I worked on. Or, oh, I needed to remember to give you this very important form to sign. You can add braille information to a tactile graph or chart, very useful. Sometimes it's a little easier to line up the slate on that than it is to find it on the braille writer. Oh, I read that. Take short notes during discussion. If you move around the classroom a lot or move between classrooms a lot, sometimes it's kind of a hassle to pull your braille writer over and around and find space on a different table and all of that. And it might be easier to just pull out your slate and stylus, take some quick notes. And of course, make some flashcards. And really just the act of making the flashcards is a very important study tool. And this is a picture of another card game I adapted called Quiddler. It's a spelling game that I used to play with some of my students. It's like Scrabble, but with cards, and I have BRL written out in cards here. The cards they both have letters and the point value. So you get to write letters and numbers on those. And then use for work, add a note to a print document. Again, you want to make sure, oh, I need to give these papers to Cindy and I need to give those papers to Leanne. I can just put a note in the corner of the page. Identifying print books. If you know that there's certain books that you use a lot, you can just open up the book and on that first blank page that's a little thicker, add a note in the corner. Sort paper money. Yes, you can fold it, but there are actually slates out there that let you put a little mark in the corner of your paper money. Hopefully one of these days we will actually get tactile ink on our paper money. Adding a phone number to a business card. I have done this at a conference. I was unprepared and only had print cards with me, and I ended up needing to pull out a slate and stylus and give my phone number. And this is actually a picture of my Mantis, my refreshable braille display next to Janus slate with a card with just a list of things. And this was literally I need to remember to ask Leanne about these things.
Now, I want to run through quickly the Slate and Stylus products that are available through APH. Yes, there are places that you can get them other places, but these are also available on federal quota, so something to think about. There are stylus choices. There are wooden handled ones. There's the saddle shaped one, as well as there's a two-ended stylus that comes with a tactile graphic line. And so if you're looking for specific slates or styluses, realize these are by preference. If you ask a avid slate and stylus user, they will tell you they have certain ones they like better than others. So realize, just like you have a favorite pen, you might want to help your student get a feel for a variety of them. We mentioned two different braille erasers. There's the wooden eraser as well as the plastic eraser. The plastic one is more like a pencil shape. So those are other ones that you can use. And the slate choices, there's a variety of slate choices available through APH. And if you can imagine, we actually had about 12 at one time. These have come down in them. We do have dark plastic ones, but we also have clear plastic ones. So if you are sighted and actually are looking for one that you can see through, which is very helpful when making tactile graphics, that's why we have a clear plastic one, often used by our transcribers. The Janus Interpoint braille slate comes with a saddle shaped stylus, so just realize that those are there. We have the mini slate with styluses. The mini book slate with styluses actually comes with 3 different styluses: the saddle and a flat short one and a flat long one, or tall one, I guess they call it. So that's another great one to see if there's a stylus that fits better in fingers. Some people really prefer the saddle. I will say I do. Not everyone does, so don't assume just because it feels good in your fingers, it feels good in someone else. We have the heavyweight metal ones. The metal ones are truly metal. They're heavier, but they do have the durability. There is also on our website a place for 3D printing your own slate. So if you have access to a 3D printer or your high school wants to do an interesting project, there is a download for a 3D printed slate. Other things that are available to think about for your student are notebooks. The Spiral Pocket Notebook comes in, has 50 pages. It comes in a pack of 6 notebooks, and it's easily fits in the Janus slate. So you could almost leave it on the Janus slate and go from there. You could rip it out and keep one in your pocket if you want. And then there are the mini spiral notebooks. They come in a pack of 2, and the mini spiral notebook goes with the mini book slate with styluses. It's built specifically to fit in there. What you can do is you can pull the notebook out of your pocket with the slate on it, and you're kind of ready to go at that time. So it's another thing that you can use. Additional tools that are available. We have a Braille date book. I mean, it's actually a full date book. It has the full calendar on the dividers, and you can actually fit those into your slate and actually keep track of your dates, keep track of homework. This is something to think about. Again, this is a personal use item. So I personally love my print date book. I have a print paper date book, not to say I don't use my electronic ones, but there's some things I just like writing down. And so thinking about giving our students ways to do this. But also APH has Brailleable labels that hold up the Braille longer, as well as the perma Braille sheets. Again, those hold the Braille longer. They're just more durable for them. Now, remember I told all of you there's a reason I wanted to talk about the Slate and Stylus. This is why. Coming soon is Poly. Poly has the next step in one of our Braille trail list of things. It has jumbo and standard Braille displays. This is meant for kids to learn contracted and uncontracted Braille. It has games, exploration, but it has a really cool thing that we have not seen here. It has an electronic slate and comes with its own stylus. So I don't know how many of you have been introducing your slate and styluses at this early age, but it does have a slate at the bottom of 6 cells, and it does give a student exposure when they create Braille. They have it both in the jumbo Braille, which is in the upper left-hand corner of the device, as well as in a refreshable Braille on the upper right-hand side of the device. It's giving students access to using the 6-key entry as well. So it's giving them electronic Braille as well as the personal ability to practice Braille on their own. We are very, very, very hopeful that it'll be released in March. One of the things I'm sure all of you are aware is there's been lots of issues with our supply chain for everything, whether that's because you needed a refrigerator for your house or you needed a car key. I got 1 car key, not 2. That's just kind of the way it is. And I know they're working very hard to keep the cost as low as possible. So that's the most I can tell you right now, that's what they're working on. But no, it is coming. I've actually held the prototype in my hands. So it's awesome. I love it. And we're working on getting enough out there for all of you. I got a question for you. I want to know, there's 2 questions that are going to come up. What is your favorite slate and stylus? So the choices I give you, you can pick more than one, are plastic, metal, interpoint, or enclosed, similar to the Janus. And the other question is, what's your favorite stylus? And I put saddle, large wooden, small wooden. If yours is not on there, put it in the chat. I'm just curious, do you have a favorite slate? Just kind of curious. What are the favorites out there? I'm going to let that roll for a little bit because I'm really curious what people's favorites are. So what was the notebook for S&S called? There's a couple notebooks. There's the Spiral Pocket Notebook and the mini Spiral Notebook. Margarita said she discovered a full page fold over slate, which helps when I have to fill in blanks. Interesting. There's lots out there. There really is. Another person said they prefer a metal slate, but would really like to try the Janus. I'll tell you, the Janus is kind of my quick and go-to. Fits index cards. It's really simple. I will say that if any of you know Gary Mudd, who was one of our VPs for a very long time, his favorite thing to use was photo paper. And he likes to poke the holes on the slippery side, if you will, and then read it on that smoother back side. It's there's quite a few people that have photo paper that they're just never using, and it works really good with a Slate and Stylus. Okay, I'm going to end the poll just so you guys can see what other people's favorites are. Other people's favorites, the metal, kind of hands down with the people that answered the survey, and the saddle, really interesting to see what people's favorites are.
Interesting.
Like
I really like the saddle, but I really like the Janus slate.
So if you can, feel free to drop anything. If you have any strategies or useful tips and tricks, we are at our end. People asked if there were resources. There sure are. The Braille writing dot by dot is available in Braille in a BRF file as well as a PDF file. The PDF file is not accessible. The BRF file is. These are older manuals by APH. I also utilized the Slate book, A Guide to the Slate and Stylus by Dunham from the National Federation for the Blind to build this. But the Braille writing dot by dot is available to you. You're welcome to download that if you would like it. It's there. And don't forget the free Slate and Stylus available to you from NFB. So again, thank you for joining us for Slate and Stylus 101. We were happy to have you with us.